Bill Tackett was my papaw. He was a United States Army veteran. He served from 1942 to 1945 in World War II. He was 26 when he was drafted. His job was an engineer. They would go to enemy territory to build bridges for the troops to cross. Once they crossed, the engineers would stay behind and blow up the bridges. The engineers would also build landing strips. He never had any major injuries. He was driving a Jeep one time and wrecked it and cut him on the head and had metal in his hip. He said one of the rules the troops had to go by was that they weren't allowed to give any food to any of the kids or any of the other people who lived around. He said they was just to throw it out. One day he was eating something and a kid was watching him. He said he couldn't stand the thought of seeing the kid hungry and him having to throw the food away. He gave the kids his food. His sergeant told him he could be court-martialed. He said what would be worse, being court-martialed or seeing a child starve. One of the things he said he thought of every day, he was in a foxhole beside his best friend. They were being shot at. He was talking to his friend, but he didn't answer back. He said he reached over to check him and brought back blood on his hands. He yelled for the medics. He was already dead. His friend was shot in the head. After being released, he was stationed in France, working at the Eiffel Tower. Later, he was moved to New York, where he was a guard at the Empire State Building. He was brought home to Pikeville, to a store across from the Red Cross Center. He said he looked across the street and he saw his sweet little mommy coming. She had no idea he was back. She had just recently went to the Red Cross Center to see if he had died or if they had any information on him. That's when she looked up and saw that he was standing there. He was stationed in different places. He said France and Ireland and Germany. His favorite place had to be Germany, though. He said that the people was really nice. And some of his friends, at that time, they would let certain people could go in different houses and stay, and they'd let some of his friends come to this one old man and woman's house, and they stayed, and he said they were really friendly. And that was the last place they'd actually stayed before he got moved and stationed into France. Later on, he married my grandmother within the 2 months after he got home. They had 10 children after that. Then when you ask him to describe the other things about the times he was in the Army, he would describe it as the worst storm you could imagine, 24 hours a day. 50 years after the war, and every time a storm would come by, he would go to his bedroom, lay in the bed and cover his head with a pillow. He would lay there and pray the whole time. I would always go in there with him, cover up, and hug him up until the storm was over with. That was the effects of the war for him. My papa ended up marrying his sweetheart, and he ended up having 10 kids. He moved back Dorton Hill, where he lived until 1998. He was 76 years old when he passed away. And none of his kids had ever went into the war, into the Army. Ready. My other grandfather, Prentice McPeak, was also a Navy veteran of World War II, 1943 through 1945. He was stationed aboard the Navy ships LST, or Landing Ship Tank. He was the gunman on these ships. He would talk about how hard it was to shooting the planes down in order to see whether they were friendly planes or enemies. He had saw planes that were shot down that was for the U.S. Army. And he said how upset it was, everybody on the ships, not really realizing how it was